Okay, it's June 10th, 2024, the continuing saga of Ron Holmes, Creek Boy from West Virginia. Um, life, life's getting exciting now. As I think, I think so much about what I'm going to say or what to include, and stir my mind that sometimes I forget what I said and I didn't say. So if I say something over, I don't mean it, but life is moving. It really is. I've gotten out of the Air Force. I've got full Air Force benefits. I'm going to school. That's what I've decided. I moved to Morgantown for just a few days, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and decided to go back home. So I ended up, of course, I'm completely free to do as I please. And I've been in the military for a couple of years and been saving money, and so I've got money and I've got time, and so now I'm headed back to the old stomping grounds, hopefully for a different outcome than what was initially going on. But um, as time goes on, it wasn't really. It was a continuation, and that's the thing. When you're in your early 20s, have no direction, have no guidance, have no boundaries, and all that. You tend to do sort of stupid things. Now, in my mind, I had a plan. I was going to do this and do that, but I got back home, and I didn't move in with mom and dad. I moved in with my brother, my brother Rick, and some friends in Steubenville, Ohio, which is right across the river from Wellsburg, where I was raised. So we're living in Steubenville, and we've got a big house, a big 5 bedroom house. It's me, Rick, my brother, my youngest brother Rick, our friends John Hudspeth, we called Huddy, Doug Bowman, we called Bo, and lo and behold, but who shows up? My dear friend Jimmy Lalone, that we went to basic training together. Well, Jimmy took advantage of the early out like I did, and somehow, some way, and I honestly I don't know how it happened, but he ended up being a roommate with us 5 guys in Steubenville, and I'm telling you, it was on. I mean, I signed up for school. Well, initially it was unemployment. Just signed up for unemployment and got a few unemployment checks, and just carried on. A continuation of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, it was sort of ridiculous. Honestly, one time I thought, let me recount what went on during that period, and it was not good. I mean, I was just out of control. Honestly, I didn't hurt anybody. It's just that I don't know, man. I mean, I was just wild as a snake. It was just girls and beer and fighting, and now of course this is later in life. Let's see. I got out in 1977, so it's been I was 21, 22, 20. I'm 23, 24 years old, and so I got to get some direction here. But I'm telling you, this period in life, and I've had some interesting sort of wild times. But when I lived in Steubenville with those guys in that house, it was wide open. I mean, everybody, Rick was working. He worked in a hospital in Weirton, and Huddy was working. Doug Bowman was working, and Jimmy and I were going to school, but Jimmy ended up working for a clothing store. Well, so I signed up for Jefferson County Technical Institute, in Steubenville, Ohio, and I decided that I wanted to be a retail manager when uh, when I grew up. You know, it just looked like it would be fun. I like the thing at the mall, the people in the stores and all that. Yeah, that was pretty cool. So so I started going to school for retail management, and in that period of time, I'm telling you now, um, wow, um, I there's no use for all a bunch of kiss and tell stuff, but boy oh boy, yeah, I didn't have any boundaries, just didn't have any. And it was, I don't know if you remember the old Bob Seger song that says Night Moves. Well, it was like that. I mean, the girls were having fun, we were having fun. He said, I used her, she used me, and neither one cared, you know. And that's all it was. It was just a good time. No serious relationships, nothing serious. Everything would just go. And so I started going to school and ended up going to school with my old friend Don Wade. You know, I was actually more his older brother Mitch's friend, but Don Wade was in school. We went to school and we ended up. I took a job with him working at a restaurant part time because the GI Bill was paying me to go to school. But I had time and I needed money, so I started working with Don in an Elby's restaurant, and I've said it, you know, I've said it my whole life. That was the favorite job for me. It was fast paced. It was fun. It was just wide open the whole time. And I was young and I enjoyed that kind of pace and the people, all the waitresses and guys I worked with and Don and I worked together and we had a good time. We really did. We had a good time at work. We had a good time after work. He was the one that uh, got me involved in rappelling. He just we he got a rope and a book and we took an old leather apron from the restaurant to protect us from getting skinned by the rope and went and jumped off a cliff, literally. And we didn't have all the safety equipment. We didn't have any carabiners. We didn't have anything like that. No helmets. None of that stuff. We had a rope, and but we did it, and we had fun. Don was excited. He still is. He's a little younger than me, but man, I see him on Facebook, and from what I understand, he's got like over 600 uh, parachute jumps, and I think, okay, Don. And he's still doing it. He's crazy. He's crazy. I don't know what happened to Mitch though. I see his sisters, I see his mom, but man, I don't see Mitch. I'm afraid to ask. I'm pretty sure he's probably dead, but whatever. So, so we're having a good time, and ended up. I don't know why, but for some reason, um, we moved out of the big house. Somebody, I don't know, about that time. Rick moved to Houston, and I think Doug moved to Houston, and I moved into another house with a girl from school. Dawn and I moved in. We rented rooms from this girl from school. Oh, what was her name? Oh, Cindy, Kathy, I forget, but she was a sweet girl, and and we rented from her until one day. Yeah, I am prone to these things. I always have been, and I want my my family and my grandchildren and whatever to take warning. You you can't be as impulsive as your grandpa has been, because I there was some woman, comes along. I'm going to school, having a good time, and now I'm not working at the restaurant. I've gone to work with Jimmy Lalone in a men's clothing store. I think it's the bottom half. it was men or just pants. They sold pants, young men's pants. So it was a lot more interesting job, and it was doing what I wanted to do. And so I switched jobs. I went from working at the restaurant to working in this clothing store, and so on. So I was actually getting experience for the retail. And so, okay, life's on a good path. Me and Don are living in this house with this girl, and she's really good. And we're going to school. We have some of the same classes. I remember we had typing, and and I never could type. And we had typing right after lunchtime, me and Don, and we would go out for lunch. We'd eat something and smoke a bunch of pot, and then we had our typing class. And and I couldn't type. I've always had this stiff finger deal going on, and I couldn't type to begin with. And then it was smoking pot, and Don he was a three fingered typist, and he typed faster than me. But yeah, it was sort of a waste of time, that typing class, and I've regretted it my whole life long because I still can't type. That's why I'm talking to you. But so I'm working with Jimmy, and the job's good, and everything's going along really good. Then along comes some girl, and I never, ever, ever should have even considered it. But yeah, no direction. As you notice, if you paid any attention to my life story, you're noticing a trend of there's no spiritual direction, none whatsoever. So I mean, I have no real boundaries other than my own, my own right, my own wrong, my own direction, and it just like I described it earlier. I've been shot out of a pinball machine, and I'm just reacting now. And along comes this girl, and I'm getting tired. We had three miserable, awful, horrible, terrible blizzards 3 years in a row. And, I just had a couple of years in South Carolina where there was not much winter to speak of. And we got this ungodly, terrible weather year after year in the winter. So I'm about on the third one, and it was so cold. I mean, we lived in that big house. Me and there's five of us. We had six cars, and there were times that none of our cars would start. Out of six cars, we couldn't get one car with enough juice to jump the other one, you know. And I was tired of it. So yeah, so life is going good. I got some direction. I got a job I like. I'm doing what I'm going to school for, and things are good. But man, I don't like the cold. I don't like it now. My horizon has been expanded because now I know that there are places that you can live, and it's not cold. You know, there are no blizzards. There is no horrible frozen pipes and cars stuck. There's none of that stuff. And so I'm going on. Along comes this girl. And like I said, never should have even said hello to her, but well, it ended up it was my brother Rick's boss's wife, and she somehow we were going, group of us going to a wedding, and she took a shine to me. I'm going to put it that way. And she just decided that she was going to move to Florida. And she comes to me and says, "Why don't you move to Florida with me?" And I said, "Well, I can't do that. I'm going to school, and I've signed up for school. I'm getting checks. I got a house. Got all this going on." And I said, "And besides that, you're married, and this whatever kind of fling you have with me, this is not supposed to be broadcast or known. This is I'm doing it. You're crazy." Well, so she does this simple. "Well, what have you got to lose?" And I looked out at that old cold, nasty weather, and I said, "Florida, huh?" Wow. Yeah, you're right. What have I got to lose? I can go to school in Florida as well as I can here, and it's warm all the time, you know? So I was off. I said, okay, all right. So I took my little meager possessions again. You know, here I am. And I'm running around the world with, some clothes and my fishing stuff and, just whatever fit in my car. That was it. And ended up going to Florida with what fit in my car. Got down there, and this crazy girl, as soon as she gets down there, she had a little daughter, and we run around looking for a job and stuff, and she somehow gets in contact with the family, and her husband was upset that she took off with me, and he was going to take the little girl from mama, and she wasn't into that. So bottom line was she took off immediately. Well, I was in Florida, but I really didn't know anybody, you know. So I'm like, man, what am I gonna do now? So I just decided, yeah, I'm gonna go see my mom. So I drove up to Virginia where my mom was and stayed with her for a couple weeks, and ended up my brother Rick had moved to Houston, and he says, oh man, he said you need to come to Houston. This is where it's going on. Well, the social situation at the time was pretty bleak. It really was. Unemployment was awful. Jimmy Carter, I mean, he destroyed the country like this clown Biden. Except he was a decent man anyway, but Biden isn't. But well, whatever. He um, he had the country all torn up, and Houston was a boom town because of the oil and all that stuff, while the rest of the country was in shambles, you know. Unemployment crazy. Interest rates were for to build a house like around 20%, you know, so everything ground to a halt because of the government. And Houston didn't sound too bad. So Rick says, "Oh, come on." So I put my stuff back in my car, and I drove across country, went to Houston, and Rick was living in this place. It was sort of odd. Some old lady had a big old house that she rented rooms, and she had like a series of these little things that looked like cinder block motel rooms. You know, she had a line of those, and Rick had one of those already, and I just decided I was going to move in the house in my own room. Did that, and then Rick and I ended up getting an apartment together. And once again, it's on. You know, the party's on. It's going on. So I'm here in Houston, and I've decided that I'm gonna go back to school and become a retail manager. And so I thought, okay, I just need to get a part-time job. You know, Rick and I had moved into this apartment, and so I get dressed up, headed out to the mall, the local mall, and got my little briefcase, and I'm looking for a retail job, you know, while I'm going to school. And I went into what was called Northline Mall. I had no idea where I was. I went in this mall, went to a young men's clothing store called Chess King, and said, "Hey, yeah, I'm looking to apply for a job. Anybody I can talk to?" And out from the back comes this guy. His name is Joe Korzak. And of course, I'm not paying attention, but Joe Korzak was the only white person in that whole place. You know, I didn't pay attention, but I told him, "Hey, I'm looking for a job," and he said, "Oh, well, come back here." And so he takes me back in the back, and he says, "Well, what's your plan here?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to school for retail management, and I want to work retail while I'm going to school." And he says, "Son, you don't have to go to school." He said, "If you want to be a retail manager, I'll make you one." So he hired me on the spot as a manager trainee at Chess King. So I started working with Joe, and I found out pretty quick, that Joe was the only other white guy working there but me. I had walked into a pretty ethnic mall, and I didn't know it. I didn't realize I'm in the black section of town, and everybody around me is black. I'm a West Virginia boy. We don't see color, and I didn't see it. I walked in there, and man, I was in for a cultural awakening because it was interesting because the people there, the black people, if I went up and spoke to them, it was like they didn't recognize my existence. And I thought, well, what's going on here? The old "Hey, can I help you?" kind of thing. And so I watched and listened and learned, and I realized that I had to talk in the language that my customers spoke in. And I had to learn certain terms. Like for instance, a lid. A hat is a lid at that time anyway. Somebody said, "Can I keep the rack?" I said, "Rack? Excuse me?" And a rack is a hanger. So where you fronts? Fronts. What are fronts? Fronts are sunglasses. So I had to learn how to approach people and how to talk to them, use their slang. Things are cool and ice cold and chill, and it changed all the time. So I had to keep up with it. All right. So I did. You know, I did, and it wasn't long that I got my first assistant manager position, right? And there was a mall that was just south. It was like a 20-minute drive. It wasn't much, and so I went to that mall as an assistant manager, and ended up I got exposed to my first gay uh, person I worked with. 'Cause that stuff didn't exist in my world. But there was a guy named Pat, and he was gay, and the boss said, "You mind working with this guy? He's feeling." The manager of the store was pregnant and was off. Her assistant manager was this gay guy, and they brought me in to be his assistant manager while she was gone. And he said, "Well, can you do that?" I'm, "Well, I guess, man. I mean, as long as the guy doesn't mess with me, I don't care what he is." But that was my first exposure, and then I my eyes began to open to a lot of different things here. I'm in a big city, and in the past, I've been the creek boy and running around and all that. Now this creek boy is way, way out of the comfort range. And I didn't like the big city. I didn't like the traffic. I didn't like the lack of mountains, the heat. There's a lot of stuff I didn't like, and so I've been there maybe 6 months or so, and Rick and I are living in a nice new apartment together, and we're having a good time. I mean, we had some wild parties. We ended up well. There's no use telling you about some of that stuff, but yeah, I mean, it was still the same old stuff, the crazy women and the fighting and all that. But I'm starting to get a little older, calming down a little bit, but still the propensity to go and throw, uh, it's really there. But I'll calm down soon. But so we're in beautiful Houston, Texas, partying like crazy, and somehow we had some friends that said, "Hey, y'all want to go to the Willie Nelson Fourth of July picnic up in Austin, which was a few hours drive, not that far." And yeah, we said okay. So we had this friend. I don't even know who it was. I can't remember. But Rick and I went with a couple other people, and this guy had a big old van. The old time conversion vans that had the carpet and all that stuff in the back. And we took off, and oh my God, I mean, it was insane. We had there was we all I can remember is those guys when we got ready to roll. They said, "Hey, let's try this," and it was some LSD something or rather. Oh yeah, sure, as usual. Oh, okay. And so I take this whatever it was, and And I remember drinking 101 proof wild turkey straight from the bottle on the way down there, and I mean, it was crazy. And so I don't even know what happened. I don't know. Next morning, wake up in this van, been sleeping apparently, and it was so stifling hot. I thought, oh my goodness, because we were, the windows were up, we were dying in this thing. So I kicked the door open and come staggering out of that van, all hung over and so on. And I looked around, and the guy that was driving the van took us to this place outside of Austin called Hippie Hollow. And Hippie Hollow was like a nudist beach on Travis Lake, Lake Travis. And I looked around, nobody had any clothes on. I'm thinking, what in the world is this? You know? And I thought, oh my goodness. So I go from this godforsaken big old city with all this mess, and I wake up in this place where it's just a bigger party than the big party that I'm used to. I thought, whoa, what's going on? We went to that Willie Nelson 4th of July picnic, and I thought, wow, man, what is this place? This is amazing. I mean, it was a free spirited, just unbelievable experience for a young guy. And I ended up, went back home, and as soon as I saw my district manager, I said, Butch, I need to get transferred to Austin. He said, what? And I said, yeah. I said, I want to live in Austin. I like that place. And he said, well, I'll see what I can do. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, he comes to me and says, okay, you want to go to Austin? I got you a place. They had one mall there that had a Chess King store in it. And they were building a new mall, first new mall there in Austin. And he said, okay, I want you to go there right now, and while they're building this mall, and work with the manager there. His name was Russ Germer. He said, work with Russ Germer, and when the new mall gets open, Russ is going to go with the new store, and you stay in that one and manage it. And I said, well, okay, all right. So, I packed my stuff once again, and it still fits in the car, and so I'm getting ready to go. And I told my brother, I said, "Look, Rick, I'm heading out. We're gonna have to find somebody to replace me in the room and so on." And so he says, "Okay, Rick's he's a very very a flexible person, like me." And he said, "Oh, cool, And so I start the process, and in the middle of it, once again, what happens? Well, I had an incident in the mall, the new mall I was working at. I was opening the store up, just put the gates up, and I had put the money in the drawer and so on, and no customers. So I got a box of stock, these shirts, and I was just stand there, taking these shirts out of the packages, taking the pins out, like you have to do. And I see an old lady go running across the front of the store. Zoom, I thought, what in the world? That old lady was moving. And then another old lady comes running behind her. And I thought, what's with these old ladies here, And then the one in the front turns around and says, you better hurry up before they start shooting. And I thought, what? Before they start what? Right? So I go and poke my head out. This is what we white people do, I guess. I go and I poke my head around the corner, and down like 3 or 4 stores, there was a corner to another hall, and on that corner was a shoe store. Well, there were people just sort of around that shoe store in a semicircle, and you could tell there's sort of well, I hear this big old crash. I thought, what in the world? And so I just went running down to the store, because the people that were standing out there, they all jumped back, and Some of them started running, and I thought, what is happening down there? And so I go running down there. I'm a West Virginia boy. We don't care. I mean, it never occurred to me it might be a bad situation. So I come wheeling around there. What the world? And I look down on the floor of this shoe store, and these two guys are rolling around wrestling in a bunch of broken glass. Apparently, there was a glass table there. They broke the glass table, and they're rolling around fighting, right? Well, they end up, one guy's on top of the other one. The guy on the bottom had a pocket knife in a sheath, right? And it's like he's trying to pull that pocket knife out, and this guy on top of him is trying to stop him, and he's trying to fight him for the knife and all that. And I come around there, and I don't know what's going on. But I knew there's a knife, and that this was an unsafe environment, and I probably should help. So, what do? I do what West Virginia Creek boys do. I go, into the mode, and and I dive through the air. I go flying through the air, knock the guy that's on top off the guy down at the bottom, and at the same time I'm wrapping my legs around this guy's waist, and I got him now in a chokehold. I got my arm around his neck, and I'm pulling, and I'm choking the snot out of him. And by then the guy that's on top, I knocked him off, and he got up and he's standing there, and his shirt's been ripped off, and I look up, this guy's just standing there, the eyes great big and stuff, and and I said, get the knife, man, get the knife, and the guy just looked at me, and so this guy that I'm choking, he says, I'm the manager, and I said, what? He said, I'm the manager. Well, the guy that was standing there heard that piece of information. Well, he knew he had to get out of there, so he took off running. So I let this guy go, and he jumps up, and he goes running after him. And I thought, wow, that was interesting. Well, this isn't a very long duration of this struggle. I mean, it was. I get down there, I identified who I thought was the good guy. I'm going to help, and dove in on it, and found out immediately that I was backwards, and they both ran off. So I went back to the store. Well, of course, it wasn't long, and down comes the shoe store manager, and he says, "Well," he said, "I thought that I'd better introduce myself to you. You see, you're pretty handy to have around there, I mean, yeah, it was pretty crazy." And so he told me the story. He said that he was the manager of the shoe store, and some guy had bought a pair of clearance shoes that there was no return. Well, he went to bring them back, and the little girl there said, "Sir, the policy on clearance, big sign right there, says no returns." And he says, "You will give me my money back." And she says, "Sir, there's no return." He said, "Well, who's the manager?" Well, the manager was up on a ladder doing a display. And this guy goes up to the manager on the ladder and shook him down off of there. And, so this guy comes down off that ladder. Well, they start fighting. And the first thing they did was they fell on a glass table. It was a display of shoe polish and stuff like that. And they shattered that. And when I walked in on it, I didn't know what in the world. I just assumed the guy with the knife was the bad guy. So he said, no. He said, I always wear this knife. It's Texas. Everybody does wear a knife. So now the reason I'm telling you the story is that immediately in this mall, I sort of became known. I mean, it was an interesting situation, that happened. Well, along comes this most beautiful little redheaded girl. Her name was Gail Harrington, and I'm telling you, that girl was cute as a button. She just was, and she wanted to introduce herself too, whatever. And a couple of days later, she comes. She says, I got a problem. She said, somebody stole my car. I went out to go home. My car is gone. So so I thought, what? So I tried to help her and all that. Well, come to find out, the little girl, she had her car repossessed. Apparently, she didn't pay the bill, but so she had her car repossessed. But I met her, and so she came and visited, and away we go in just a short time. And I said, well, Gail, it's been fun, but I'm about to move to Austin. I've got this opportunity in Austin. It's a great place, and so I've got a chance to be a manager and blah blah blah. And she says, "Oh wow." Well, we got talking. I said, "You can go if you want." And she said, "Okay." And sure enough, man, I don't know. It's just another one of those stupid moves. And it wasn't, Gail was a great person, and I'm going to tell you, we moved to Austin, and I just was not good to her at all. I mean, I was an inconsiderate, in the drinking. It's just every day, and it's really beginning to affect my life. I mean, I'm going. When I lived in Austin, I went through a lot of phases and things. I did a lot of different types of things. I was a vegetarian for 3 years, just see what it would do for my health, and 4 years maybe, and I didn't ride my bicycle for 3 years because there that Arab oil embargo, and I said those Arab people aren't going to cramp my lifestyle. So Austin had 75 miles of bike trails. I had a bicycle. It was my hobby. So for 3 years, I didn't drive my car except to go see Rick a couple of times in Houston. So yeah, so Austin was a great place, but I was just a bad boyfriend. Drunk. I couldn't help it. I get off work, and this started back in West Virginia, and I wanted to get away from it, but it just didn't happen. And it wasn't it wasn't that I didn't have willpower because I really did. I quit smoking at 25. I could control most anything except for drinking. I mean, it had me, and so I was not a good friend or companion to Gail. I just wasn't. I feel bad about it too because she was so sweet, she was so happy, just a beautiful little thing. But but she had enough sense that after I don't know how long it was, a year or so, I don't know. After a while, she just packed it up and moved. She left. She had a job as a secretary somewhere or another, and started hanging around with her friends and all. And she just one day just decided that she'd had enough of me, and I understood. It didn't make any difference to me. I just sort of said, "Okay, c'est la vie, see you," you know. And so back to the same old thing. But now I'm a manager of a clothing store. Now I've got my own store. I'm living in Austin. It would be around 1979, 80, in that range, I think. Around that range. Around 77. Yeah, it would have been around 80, in that range, 79, 80. And Austin was a great place. It was. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of adventures, a lot of fun, a lot of friends, and so on. And eventually even my old friend from the Air Force, Jimmy Cepeda, he was from Austin, and he ended up moving back to Austin. That'll be later, but yeah, it was on, and I it's another one of those periods that I just sort of miss in my mind. It takes a while to recollect because I was living hard, and and I mean, in some regards, it was fun, but now once you've been drinking hard for a while, it gets to the point it's not fun anymore. And so I end up with this habit that I'm not really enjoying. So there's going to have to be some transition things going on here. But it's 40 minutes now, and we're going to move on. I'm in Austin. I've just let's say I've become the manager. Uh, Gail has run off. I'm by myself, and then once again it gets interesting. I'll be back in a little while. Thanks a lot. Bye.